This is the Mint on ZTN Prime, your sneak peek into the world of business, finance and economies. I'm Ibn Mabunda, the money man. Let's get started. Now, coming up on the Mint, the Zimbabwe Tourism Authority has given unregistered tourism operators until February 28 to regularize their businesses ahead of a nationwide enforcement blitz starting the 1st of March. The authority says illegal hotels, lodges and short-term rentals are undermining standards, compromising safety and creating unfair competition. This follows the government's approval of a tourism fee review cutting some licensing charges by up to 25 and 50% and scrapping others to ease the cost of doing business. However, the reductions have not yet been fully operationalized. Big question is, how sustainable are Zimbabwe's tourism reforms, and will reduced fees combined with stricter enforcement truly formalize this very sector? We speak to the Hospitality Association of Zimbabwe. Now, the Mint will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Well, you're watching the Mint as a broadcast to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. Now, Zimbabwe's tourism sector is undergoing significant reform anchored on government's approval of a comprehensive review of tourism licensing and registration fees, with some charges set to be cut by between 25 and 50% and others scrapped altogether. At the same time, the Zimbabwe Tourism Authority has issued a firm compliance directive giving unregistered tourism operators until the 28th of February to regularize their operations ahead of a nationwide enforcement blitz beginning on the 1st of March. The big question is, can Zimbabwe strike the right balance between easing the cost of doing business and enforcing strict compliance to protect industry standards? For that, I'm joined in conversation by the Hospitality Association of Zimbabwe President, Emma Kativo. Emma, hello and welcome to the Mint.
Thank you, Eben. It's nice to be here.
Fantastic. To get the ball rolling, may you speak to us about the length and the breadth of the mandate of the Hospitality Association of Zimbabwe?
Thank you, Eben. Thank you for having me here. The Hospitality Association of Zimbabwe is a private sector-driven association made up of hotel operators. Before, it used to include restaurants, but mostly now we're looking at the operators that are involved in accommodation and conferencing facilities, if they have conferencing facilities on their premises. And really, one of our mandate is playing an advocacy role and representing our members. And this works towards creating a more favorable environment for our members and encouraging them to grow in a sustainable manner. And so we engage government, we engage policymakers, we engage civil society, communities, and collaborate with them. So it's more engagement now rather than advocacy, but it's engaging them so that there's ease of doing business and growing our economy at the end of the day. And so we offer membership support to those who are members of the association. We offer training programs so that they're up to date with international standards and also with health and safety issues. I think we're coming from a post-COVID, the post-COVID pandemic, and it really taught us the need to have those trainings so that we are prepared in the event that another pandemic happens. We do not totally close down, but we already have these protocols that we follow. And that's one of the mandates that has. And of course, promoting tourism within Zimbabwe. We have the accommodation spaces, we have the conferencing spaces. And so it is also one of our mandates to work with ZTE, our authority, in marketing and promoting Destination Zimbabwe. And that comes, of course, with upgrading making sure that our facilities meet world standards. And so we actually have committees within the association that just work on improving standards and training members.
Right. Just to jump in there,
Sure.
Zimbabwe was recently named the 2025 World's Best Country to Visit by Forbes magazine. What is it that has contributed to that?
I think it's a concerted efforts across all the boards, collaborative efforts between the private sector, the ministry itself, the government and the authority in making sure that the experience that visitors have, whether they're domestic or whether they're international or regional, that the type of service that we offer is world standard, and that comes by upgrading. I think you've seen a lot of hotels and a lot of new boutique establishments which are smaller coming up, and that's just improving the customer experience when they come through. And it's not just us with the accommodation spaces. We also have tour operators that arrange tours, and that's another cluster, of course. But it's all of us within the tourism ecosystem who have been working tirelessly to improve our standards so that we get to that level where finally we are being also recognized on the international platforms.
Right. Let's talk about some figures a little bit in terms of the inflows of international tourists into Zimbabwe in 2025, comparing with like-for-like 2024. A total of 496,668 tourist arrivals were recorded in the third quarter of 2025. We're using the third quarter 2025 as you're aware that the 2025 full year stats are yet to be tabulated. That was up 10% from the same period of 2024, while over 1.6 million tourists, of course, visited in 2024, generating about $1.2 billion worth of revenue. What is your sentiment around some of these statistics that we've got at hand, which, of course, positive, by the way?
They are indeed encouraging, and it shows that the efforts that are being done are carrying fruit. We are beginning to see the fruit of the attendance of trade shows across the globe by tourism players, by the tourism authority to market our destination, and making sure that we're not only marketing but also making sure that we are ready. And I think also the world market is opening up to realizing that Zimbabwe is indeed a true gem. And it doesn't take away also that we do experience relatively a good peaceful environment. Our crime rates are very low. And so that makes it a safe destination for the international traveler. And of course, we pride ourselves in being good hosts culturally, and that adds that pizzazz to it, so to say.
Right. Cabinet has announced a reduction of tourism licensing and registration fees by up to 50%. And once operationalized, the question is, do you expect this to significantly improve compliance among operators? Within that same bracket, this was announced, but it's yet to be operationalized. Your sentiment?
Okay. I think that was a very good move, and it came from, I think, years where the private sector was pushing for the reduction and also streamlining the licenses. And we are happy, and we acknowledge with appreciation the listening ear that was provided and the engagements that took place. I think the last 2 years there were consultative meetings that were held between the authority, the ministry, and the private sector, where we all tabled out all the multiple licenses that operators were coming across. And I'm glad to say that, yes, the reductions are there. But as you know, with policy, once an announcement has been made, it's not overnight. It has to go through the different processes that lead to it being coming into effect. And I know for us, mainly maybe the ZTA registration figures recently came out, and there has been a significant reduction. And I think that encourages compliance from members who may have thought it's not affordable. So what we know and feel is that it is coming. It might take time for it to really come into effect, but the fact that those consultations have been where we sit down and we look at each licensing fee and negotiations took place. It can't be zero, of course, because then those fees also assist in making sure that the inspections and everything that goes about making sure there's compliance is there.
Right. Players within your sector have long contended that they're having to deal with up to 17 tax heads. What is your thought process around having them streamlined? You have got a one-stop payment portal that all these payments are made at one go.
That is the dream and the
dream, you call it.
Yes, and the ideal situation, and I think we are moving towards that. The reforms cannot happen overnight because there's so many maybe processes tied to each license, and those have to be looked at and scrutinized. But what we appreciate at this moment is that each one of them has been considered, and the streamlining has not only just taken place, but it's an ongoing process. So even the engagements do not just happen and end there. But the agreement and the understanding is that these engagements will continue to proceed, and we look at it and review. So there is them coming into effect, and then constant monitoring and evaluation to see the effectiveness of each process that will have taken place.
Right. Speaking of process,
yes,
the Zimbabwe Tourism Authority has set the February 28 deadline for unregistered operators to comply with a successive blitz set to be carried out effective the 1st of March 2025. Why is this happening, especially at this point?
I think that this is to ensure that the standards that we give. Look, we have just attained an accolade or a recognition that shows that we can be regarded as a best practice destination, whereby even some within the region would say, go and see what's happening in Zimbabwe. And so we need to streamline, and we need to make sure that our standards within appeal also internationally. And when you look at maybe people who are not registered, then who will follow up on making sure that we are protecting the visitor that is coming in, the guest that is coming in. And this comes when there have been many reports or incidences that are happening in some of these unregistered places where maybe even a customer gets hurt or an accident happens and there's no insurance and there's no reprieve, there's no recourse. And but if that person had been registered, then they would, for the registration to take place, there are certain things that have to be in place. There are certain standards, that minimum standards they have to meet. And so you end up someone coming out of an establishment which is not registered. They do not comply with the standards. And so we are putting not only the international person at risk, but even us, the domestic traveler. You stay in that place and maybe it's infested, and maybe there are no health protocols. There are no SOPs, standard operating procedures that are there. They are not a member of any association that helps them in maintaining those standards or training their staff. So I think if we want to attain that world-class standard, it is imperative at this juncture to say and to encourage. This blitz is not punitive in any way, but it's an encouragement to say, come on board, regularize, be compliant, and you will be given the full support.
What incentives are you putting in place to ensure that you are able to meet these players halfway? Airbnb has been a growing source of revenue for many property owners across the country. How are you meeting them halfway so that they are incentivized enough to come on board?
I think that the fees themselves are not ridiculous in any sense.
How much are we talking about here?
The last time I checked, it's about $200 per annum. So this is for the whole year. This is the registration or the subscription fee to ZTA is $200, if I'm not mistaken, for the whole year. For the whole year. And with that comes training, free training from ZTA. Of course, I'm not talking on behalf of the authority, but these are the benefits that our members have received by being registered and being compliant. Are the free trainings, the whole ensuring that we are compliant, giving us tips on how we can market our places or our establishments. And I think that is one of the advantages. There is power in being in a group. Look, these licenses have come down because operators came together as a group and said, hang on, there's too much multiple licenses. Can we look at streamlining them and create ease of doing business? And so if we know Airbnbs have their issues, and if they also come and become part of a group or a part of the association and regularize, there are many benefits that we can glean from that.
Time for us to take a breather. When we come back, we look at investment in Zimbabwe's tourism sector as we continue the conversation with Hospitality Association of Zimbabwe President Emma Kativu. The men to be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Didn't graduate. I guess I blew it.
You couldn't advise him anything. He would just look at you and say, so who do you think you are?
We were just like really spoiled.
And then they just give me the receipt and I'd pay.
That guy walks in one day and then he says that he wants to make a movie.
He was blowing the money.
There was just like this habit that he had where as soon as he got money, it was gone.
I just didn't have the skills or the experience.
This money, I could see it disappear so fast.
Catch exclusive interviews every weekday for candid, exciting, and thought-provoking conversations with your host, Erika Ndoro.
We talk about arts, we can talk about sports, we can even talk about politics, and sometimes we venture into a nice guitaristic play. The one story where you can't get out of your head.
Wakatarisa munhu so Erika like where you are sitting. Ndozongokona bata face so pasina munhu.
Wakasiya music yako yo afro chakuti ndo music manje no yeMzimbabwe.
And I'm sure they're still saying the same thing now.
Yeah, so
Shona kana kuti chindevere kana mumwe mutauri muno muZimbabwe ndiwe iwewe. Ndiwo rupawo rwako. Ndicho chidadiso chako.
Catch me, Erika Ndoro, right here on ZTN Prime every single Monday at 7 p.m. whilst we get exclusive.
Of course, you're watching The Mint as we come to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. I'm Eben Mabunda. We continue the conversation with the Hospitality Association of Zimbabwe President, Emma Kativu, looking at the regulatory framework in the country's tourism sector, the incentives in place, as well as the recognition that Zimbabwe is now starting to have on the global scenes, having, of course, being named the world top destination to visit by Forbes magazine in 2025. Now, picking up from where we left off at a regulatory perspective, there is emphasis on mandatory third-party insurance for operators. Why is insurance compliance critical in boosting the country's tourism credibility?
Like you rightly said, the industry's credibility. A lot can happen when somebody comes to stay at an operator's establishment, be it a hotel or a conferencing center. And you would find that most of the international visitors come from very litigious societies. And so it is important for us to ensure that the third party is protected and that the establishment itself makes sure and gives the client that peace of mind. And speaking from the association point of view, we have actually gone in to sign, we're signing an MOU with FBC Bank coming in a few weeks' time. This is to ensure that all of our members have an easy way and maybe of having the third-party insurance. And of course, it's one of the mandatory requirements by ZTA for one to be registered with them. And so this ensures compliance and ensures that every guest or every client, every visitor that visits our establishments is protected. And we've not only just gone that far, but also to protect the premises itself. Over the few years, we've seen fires breaking out in some of our establishments. And so if you are insured, then the recovery time and getting back into business is very, very little. And so we feel that it is at a critical stage whereby one of the areas where we would say, I'm safe, I'm compliant, is to have not only third-party insurance, but to also insure the business itself.
Right. Let's look at other issues affecting the tourism sector beyond regularization, as well as the incentives in place to try and meet both sides of the coin, swinging in the same direction. Now, transport infrastructure remains a concern in Zimbabwe. A good example would be the state of the Bulawayo Victoria Falls highway, and you'd also find there are connectivity issues where air transport is concerned with some of the destinations that we've got in our country, destinations like Kariba, Nyanga, the Eastern Highlands, Great Zimbabwe, for an illustration. How important is that, and what should be done or could be done to improve the state of affairs there?
Thank you, Eben. Definitely. It would be pointless to have all these beautiful spaces to have our visitors visit if there was no access to them, and be it road, rail, or even air. And we are seeing the improvements there. With the Harare, Bulawayo, and Victoria Falls Road, I think we've seen the gradual improvement there. I think I'm not too sure of the percentage in terms of the road being rehabilitated now, but we are seeing traction as we speak. And we think that is the way to go, to ensure that for the domestic traveler, if they're not going to use air, they're able to access all our tourist attraction destinations. And we've seen the Harare Masvingo Road. I think it's just a small patch that is left now, but accessing to Masvingo, the road has been repaired and rehabilitation is taking place. I know plans are underway for the Harare Kariba. And so it is exciting for us because we know that during our public holidays and school holidays, people can access, visitors can access, citizens can access, because also one of our drive is to push domestic tourism, and the majority of our domestic travelers use road transport.
Right. Another element, there is a growth in terms of conferencing around Harare, Bulawayo, Victoria Falls, and yet accommodation still lags behind in terms of its ability to accommodate thousands as and when there is actually need. Zimbabwe will be co-hosting a World Cup in the next couple of years in the Victoria Falls area alongside one or two neighbors in that particular regard. The question is, what's needed to ensure there is the inflow of investment in the tourism facilities that we've got, especially from an accommodation perspective?
Definitely, we would say there is a shortage, and so investors, property developers are encouraged to come and collaborate with operators so that we can improve our room inventory. But also on that, because we do not have the correct statistics of, you were talking about the Airbnbs and probably other hotels or establishments that are not registered, and so they are not on the statistics or on the count of the revenue count. But if they came on board and they were their capacity was built and they were promoted, those are also areas whereby we could improve our room inventory. You'd find some of them, they've got very high standards, but it's just that they are not registered and they might not see the benefit. But when we have these MICE events taking place, they can also share on part of the cake and know that they're fully registered, and whoever is hosting that event can comfortably place them in those different areas.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Very
Sure.
quickly, there is strong emphasis on Victoria Falls, and yet you've got other beautiful places, Great Zimbabwe, Kariba, the Eastern Highlands. What should be done to improve the outlook of some of those places?
I think rehabilitations are already taking place. I think the Great Zimbabwe Monument, there was a partnership with them, with UNESCO and the French government, to upgrade and restore, carry out restorative works at Great Zimbabwe. And that in itself is going to improve the traffic towards Mashingo, towards Great Zimbabwe. And I think there's also a DMC that's working hard in making sure that it is marketed well across the globe. And similar activities or similar processes are being looked at the different spaces. I think if you look at Nyanga, over the past few years, the landscape itself in terms of lodges and boutique spaces, hotels, has really grown. So there is also a look towards the Eastern Highlands. Even the reason why Sanganai was held in Mutare was to also shift focus to say, hang on, we also have these other beautiful spaces. And I tell you, it was just breathtaking to have a look at the Eastern Highlands and host such a beautiful and such a big national event in that area.
Right, as we wrap up, your last message in the next 45 seconds to our viewers today.
Is that we are looking at very exciting times for the tourism industry, and it is important to know that everyone plays a role along the value chain or in the ecosystem, and that whichever space that you are in, do your best and work towards building a beautiful Zimbabwe within the region.
Hospitality Association of Zimbabwe President Emma Kativo, thank you for appearing on The Mint this very day. And of course, that's a wrap on The Mint today. Do follow us on our social media handles, the ZIM Papers TV network, as well as at ZTN Prime. Your views and your thoughts are important to us. I'm Ibn Mabunda, the money man. Let them do what they do. When we do what we do, we mean business. Thank you for watching and have a great weekend.